And this is it, your one-stop shop emote tutorial, and I am Shy Fox, and I am your go-to emote art educator on YouTube. I've been making emotes for years. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to draw a heart emote, the character Link from Zelda, and I'm going to show you every single step, and I'm not going to skip anything. You guys requested that, so that's what we're going to do. Heart emotes tend to be the most popular and most commissioned type of emote for me, so I thought that that's what we would do, and you can draw along if you like and create your own heart emote character and tweak it so that it is your own. That said, this is a long, lengthy, full guide on how to create these emotes, and you're not going to complain because who else is going to show you every single step of the way on how to create these emotes? Who's going to do that? Oh, me. I'm going to do that for you. There will be timestamps so you can jump through and go back at your own convenience and skip through like a textbook. If you already have a pretty decent understanding of how to make digital art, you may prefer to watch my shorter version, my previous version on how to draw emotes, so you can check that out. That'd be this video here, how to draw emotes. It's still in depth, but not quite as in depth as this one's gonna be. And also I have an entire playlist of a bunch of emote based art tutorials that I have, like why do your emotes look distorted? So check this out as well, link in the description for that. There is a free trial on Clip Studio Paint for 3 months, so you may want to check that out, and it is available on iPad and PC and Mac and whatever platform you want to use. Just worth noting that after this whole video, I'm doing a video on animating emotes that may be of interest to you, especially because it'll be the simplest type of animation, frame by frame, and in Clip Studio Paint itself. And there is a workaround for making transparent backgrounds in Clip Studio Paint so that you can do it for your emotes, so stay tuned for that one. I have reset my Clip Studio Paint back to default settings so that anybody new can just pick it up and start drawing, so there's no like weird settings or brushes that you won't have, so it's accessible to everyone. So like and subscribe if all that interests you, and you can also comment if you have questions while we're going through this video and other video suggestions for us. So we're gonna get started, and the first step is gonna be gathering those references. Just a disclaimer though, do not trace emotes. You're gonna tick some people off, okay? So don't trace. What I mean by referencing then is to look, but not to touch other people's emotes or artwork. So find yourself some references online. You can use something like PureRef or VizRef. PureRef is for PC and it is free, and VizRef is for iPad and it is worth a couple bucks, by the way. If you're working from one monitor, it might be a good idea that once you find your reference, you just click on it, copy image, go to your program and go File, Create, New from Clipboard, and then you can actually drag this window out and have it as a floating window. On iPad, you can kind of just split screen it and it works just as well. Now we're actually gonna get started and create the canvas. So go File, New, and from here, we're gonna do a 500 by 500 canvas. 90 DPI is fine in the unit of pixels, and I like to have my record time-lapse button turned on. And you can name it, and I'm gonna name this Link Heart Emote. Click OK. And one more thing, because I'm starting from the default workspace in Clip Studio Paint, I want to just fix it up so that it's going to work for my purposes teaching you guys. I'm actually going to start getting rid of some of these windows, drag them out, close them up, so that this is much more suitable. Now, how I have this arranged is my tools are here, colors, type of sub tool, and then we have the tool properties for that, then we have layers, and then we have the brushes over here. Now for the sketch, this is sometimes the hardest part for people who are brand new to digital art, is literally the drawing part. And you can draw on paper first if that's preferred for you, and take a picture of it, and then File, Open, bring it into your program. And I've also done an entire tutorial on emotes specifically for if you don't have like a drawing tablet and you're working with your mouse, so that'll be in the description. I'll link that. Now we want to get started on a layer that is a non-paper layer. I guess I like to just delete the paper layer out if it's there. In this case, I just have my regular layer, so you can create a new layer and delete the paper layer if that's the case for you. And we're gonna find a pencil tool, and we're gonna go, and I like to work with blue pencil, color blue, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. We're gonna get started. Now this is a heart emote, so there's a couple things we need to note. In general, we're gonna have the heart kind of in this area, and it will cut off. I mean, you can make the whole heart fit, but it is sort of typical that emotes have edges cut off, and that's just because emotes are really tiny. So I'll be giving tips about optimizing for the small space that we're expecting to shrink down to. So this is my sort of heart that I'm going with. It's going to have little shines on it, and that's more or less what it's going to be. And if you were to think of this whole canvas split up into like a grid of quarters, then this heart is taking up most of this bottom left corners section. So we can just kind of get rid of that now. Just kind of wanted to show you that. So back to sketching. And if you're like me, I tend to like using different layers. It just really helps so that if I start like new layer right now, if I start sketching like the head and I'm like, oh, I'd really like to move the heart around, I can do it without messing with my other layers. So I find it valuable to actually have separate layers. So on a new layer, I've got my heart layer, and then on a new layer, I'm gonna draw, I just like to draw a circle, and circles are tough, so just go round and round and round. And then you slowly kind of like find what is a circular shape, and I just kind of sketch. So that gives you a base to work from. That's relatively round, and it's a little bit small for my liking, so I'm gonna hit this scale rotate, scale it up a little bit. And I'm thinking about, where do I want this head to be? Roughly there. And it will overlap with the heart a little bit. And I'm gonna turn down the opacity because this circle is literally just a guide for me. And I do like to sketch the circle every time. It's just good practice. And next thing I'm gonna do is actually kind of sketch the shape of this face. So it's gonna come down and then bump out a little bit. Link, in this case, he's like a chibi. Emotes are chibified, so it's gonna have that little bump there and come back up this side. Now I'm staring at images of what Link looks like so that I can remember like his hair and stuff. So from here, I'm actually gonna start sketching some of that hair. And again, this is a me thing, maybe not a you thing, but I am, every time I kind of work on a new section, I make a new layer and then I start merging them together. That is just my preference. So I'm thinking about hair, and hair is best done in sections. Some of you guys have requested, like, can you make a hair tutorial for emotes or an eye tutorial for emotes? And the answer is like, yes, ultimately I will do that for you guys if you can ever so patiently wait for me to make them. But I'm not going to go into like super in-depth information on how to do hair for emotes and how to do eyes and things. In this one, this is more just like an overall process so that you can familiarize yourself with that process. So I'm just gonna do the hair as best as I can, and it might require some fixing and erasing, and that's okay. I am not gonna get it all right first time, and it might just end up looking kind of weird and need to be fixed. So I'm gonna work on my hair, the hair here a little bit. And again, I'm just thinking about sections. And Link's different in that he has these elf-like ears. And he has these longer hair strands down by the side of his head, so we're gonna make sure we include that. And I've got some overlap happening, so I think it would be a good idea to start erasing things that I don't need anymore. I'm actually even gonna delete my circle layer at this point. That reference layer, or that layer in general, I just don't really need it. So delete it, and I'm gonna start erasing this line. And that's another reason why separate layers is useful, is it makes erasing some of these overlap areas easier. You can't really see this ear, so this is kind of one of those things where I have to make a call. Do I want to even bother having that ear on the far side show? And I'm thinking I'm just gonna have it blocked out by hair. Link has a hat, so we're gonna also draw that. I'm gonna do a new layer. and the hat will get cut off by the edges of our emote canvas, and that is fine. So we've got the hair and the hat and the heart and the face shape, and to keep things simple in this art tutorial, I'm just gonna do the closed eye look. And again, the eyes is something I actually want to cover as an individual video on how to draw eyes for emotes, because that is an important part of emote art, and you guys have requested that too. So I will do that video, stay tuned for that one. But for now, I'm just doing like an arch, and I like it when we have like sketchy looking tips on either side. It just kind of looks nice. So really it's just that arch and making these nice and thick. So there's one, and sometimes I even like to make a new layer for each one. So like once I'm done them, I'll just like pick them up and move them around individually, which is just kind of easier than trying to like select and move them, because sometimes they need to be moved independently of the other. Now there is some overlap with hair here, the way I've drawn it, and I'm not liking, this is exactly what I'm talking about, the positioning of these and size from one to the other. So this is where this is going to get useful. If I go to my transform, and this eye is on its own layer, the free transform I find is the most useful for this kind of thing. So I'm just going to kind of move it around and move the other one around as well. And I'm liking that a little bit better. In this case, I might even want to shrink my eyes down. Oops, to do that, I probably need to use the scale. Get those positioned. And it's at this point where I'm thinking about the emote as a whole, the whole emote. And I actually want to start making adjustments to how big things are and emphasize what's important. The most important thing is Link's face. The heart is important too, but I'm going to say not quite as important. So I'm actually going to shrink this heart down a little bit and give some space for Link's head. And I'm going to shift, like click the first layer here, like the heart is on its own, not the heart, but all my other ones are Link's head. Shift click all of them and transform. And we're going to do scale, and I'd like to make this bigger and rotate even. Maybe we're even going to rotate. So I want to make room for this, and I might even do a little bit of free transform. I think the head could benefit from being just slightly more narrow, and I want the cheek to show, so I'm thinking about that. I kind of like that cheek shape, so I'm thinking right about there, and I'm just going to move my heart down just a tiny bit more, and there. I'm happy with the placement of those things. So do we like the eyes? Just tweak them a little bit more, and you'll find if you watch me ever make emotes, I go through a lot of tweaking and moving, and how you know how to do that is a lot of just experience. Sorry to say that, but a lot of experience, but you can help yourself out with references, and you can also help yourself out if you flip your canvas sideways. That's also really, really helpful. So you can go view, flip, rotate, and do a flip horizontal just to see what that looks like. And you'll often find things look different from this perspective, and it gives you an opportunity with that different perspective to catch your mistakes. So I highly recommend doing those horizontal flips from time to time. Link needs a mouth, and I'm just going to do a simple little smile for this. It's going to slightly overlap with the heart probably, but that's okay. And I'm going to have blushy cheeks, so I'm kind of just going to sketch that in to show that that's something I'll color later. One of the trickier parts is going to be drawing the hands, so wish us luck. But I do have tips around drawing hands, and specifically for emotes that have hands holding a heart. So on a new layer, and I would recommend doing a new layer for each of the two hands, we can start with the one on this side, and I would just do sort of a circle shape to just kind of mark in where that hand is going to go. And it actually should be positioned kind of to the side of the heart, as in the hand is coming around the heart. So we definitely want to make that seem like that's the case. So we can erase that edge and draw in the fingers. So we can do one angled that way and one angled that way, and they're all going to kind of point inward, if that makes sense. So there should be room for 4 fingers, but you can also do it as 3 fingers if you like. So sometimes with hands and fingers and things, because they're so fussy, sometimes I'll draw it and then I'll turn down the opacity, make a new layer again, and kind of like draw in those fingers again over top, just to kind of give myself the chance to make that look better, look more like the way that I want. So something roughly like that. And the back of the hand, and I can move it if I want to, and then if I'm decided on that, I can even delete the other layer that was underneath. They don't have to be perfect, fortunately, these kinds of hands, because they just are chibi hands anyway. And I'm gonna do the other one as well. So oval, and placement wise, I think that is just fine. And turn the opacity down, new layer again. And I'm going to do the same sort of strategy where all the fingers are kind of inward pointing. And they're not all the same length, right? Like your 2 fingers here are going to be longer than these ones. So we think about mini versions of real hands, and this is totally good enough. You could also add in like a thumb if you wanted on the side, but in this case it's going to almost seem like the thumb is on the other side of the heart, grabbing a heart like that. So you can even reference yourself, like what would it look like if you were to hold it? You can look at me. What would it look like? I guess. And all right, I'm gonna erase part of the heart at the bottom here. And delete that other layer. And if you get lost in your layers, you can just kind of turn them on and off to figure out what's what. And when you are satisfied with certain things, you can merge them together. For example, merging the eyes together, merging the hat into the hair, merging the hair into the face shape. Maybe I want to merge the eyes into the face. And then you start to group things when you're sort of like ready to. And I feel like I'm ready to group the head. The heart is good on its own, but maybe I'm ready to group the hands with the heart, and maybe I'm ready to group all of it. But I'm gonna leave these 2 sections separately, because again, sometimes these are good for scaling and changing. Like I could scale this at this point or whatever. We kind of already did that, so I'm pretty comfortable with placement. But now again, take a look at yours, maybe do a flip test and decide what needs fixing, what needs changing. So I'm gonna create one more layer here for our sketch, and this should be the last layer for sketching. And I'm just intending to kind of create the shoulder and side of Link over here. So it'll mostly be shoulder is what I'm expecting to show. So that'll be pretty much it. Just kind of a round thing. Round shape is the shoulder. And what is Link even wearing? Something green is what I would expect. So we're not even going to see a whole lot of detail. It'll probably just show up green, and that's all I'm going to do. And this is a me thing, but I like to envision with a brush. What brushes do we even have nowadays in here? And I would do this for commissions. I thought it looked nice to kind of go around the whole emotes edge in a thick sort of outline, or even the areas that are kind of defined as important. So the heart being different from Link's head is kind of important. Kind of going around those edges, making them bold, because in the colored version, they're definitely gonna be bold. And I just think that kind of makes the sketch pop, and it's nice to show my art clients that. So the sketch is pretty well done, so I'm gonna merge it all together. It's on one layer, and I'm just gonna give it a color so that I know my sketch is that one. So when I start messing around with the next steps, I'll always know that the yellow layer is my sketch layer. So the next step for us is to start making some folders. We'll start with one and we'll use it for the lines that we're gonna do. So I've created a folder, and I'm also gonna turn the opacity down of the sketch so that it's easy peasy to draw lines over top of it. So the line portion of this is really where Clip Studio Paint's strengths shine, and we make use of those vector tools. So with our new folder, I'm gonna give it a color, maybe let's do red, and I'm gonna just know that my line layers are in the red folder. And then I'm gonna create a vector layer. And if you're in another program, then I guess don't worry about vector tools. You're just gonna go ahead and line your emote. But if you're in Clip Studio Paint, you can take advantage and learn why these tools are great. So vector layer then, and we're gonna pick black, and G-pen is fine. And as far as stabilization goes in your tool properties, you may want to mess with it and change that so when you do your lines it feels kind of smooth. Yes, very smooth, not shaky. So stabilization probably needs to go up. Play with that a little bit. And I find lately that a size 5 brush is typically the brush size that I am enjoying doing my lines with. And you can just start sketching her in. Now for me, I'm pretty experienced, so I'm probably gonna make this look easy. It is not easy to do lines, and for many people learning digital art, the lines part and the lines portion of making art is sometimes the most frustrating part. But if you kind of use some of the tips and tricks that come with making your lines more steady, that should make the process a little less painful. And maybe even fun. I kind of think the line art portion is fun. In this case, I am going to make all my lines black. That's what I'm planning to do. So I'm going to just do all my lines on the same layer. In my previous detailed emote tutorial, I actually did various lines on different layers. For example, the hat would be on a different layer from the hair and from the skin, and that each of those lined areas would then be colored afterwards. For simplicity, I think it is easier and fine. In fact, I've been doing my emotes this way for a while. This is one of the minimal differences from my emotes of when I created that other tutorial, was actually just doing my line art black, with some exceptions, especially light colored emotes. Like, I don't know, if there's a lot of white, it gives an opportunity to then use different colored lines, but it is an art form, so you can make that artistic call for yourself. So as I'm going, one of the nice things about these vector tools is being able to adjust. So if you see that, it's like, oh, that curve was really close, not quite. You can find the object tool, the operation here, and object. And then if you click on a line, it gives you options to do things to that line. And you can see tool properties. I want to do free transform. So where it says mode, free transform is by far my favorite for tweaking lines, and I highly recommend it. That free transform is very useful. So let's use that here. And again, free transform mode of the object tool. Getting it exactly the way I want, and then the vector eraser. So if you find your way to the eraser and you see vector, you can erase at intersections. Oops, I'm somehow ended up on the wrong layer. So if things stop working, maybe, are you even on the right layer still? I wasn't. so we can erase. It's like magical. And I'm actually going to move this again. I've changed my mind. Better. And I think in this case, I'm going to do my eyes on the eyes and the mouth on a separate vector layer. So again, we are vector, but I'm going to do the eyes with a paintbrush. Now I haven't experimented with some of these, so I don't know if they'll do what we want. So, you know, go ahead and find a brush that you think is going to work for you. Round mixing brush, I think, is probably what we want. And I'm just kind of making it look a little feathery on the end, on either end. And of course, following that same curve. And eyes are important, so take your time, no rush. And I'm gonna add a little, with the G pen, a little line here. You could use your brush as well for that. Back to my brush on that same layer, and you may need to change your stabilizer again to get your lines kind of slow and smooth enough. Mine aren't feeling very smooth, so I'm going to turn this up to the same-ish of where what my pencil was and my pen was, because these settings are for each and every tool. And I'm going to use the pen tool for the mouth. And I want it a little wider on the edges of the corners of the mouth and thinner around just that smile. And I'm not going to sketch the cheeks blush situation. That'll just come through in the coloring, assuming I remember to do it, you know. Shoulder. And did we get all the lines? I guess we kind of didn't do a line over here for the heart. In fact, I'm actually going to improvise something right now. There probably should be a sense of a sleeve there, so I'm going to kind of add that in. Kind of a sleeve on both sides. Like this part of your sleeve. What do you call this? Like the cuff. We're going to add a sleeve cuff on either side. I think that'll just add to the look of it. It might help to zoom in a little bit, but don't waste your time too much on perfecting this stuff because emotes are small anyway. And I'm just gonna fix up the inner corners of this eye just a touch more, being picky about it, maybe doing a flip test and just, do we like the placement of things? Do we like everything? And the only thing I want to fix is to thicken and enlarge this eye so that it feels more even with the other. That looks better, and you can even rotate it a little bit. That looks great. And deselect. So the things I'm not bothering to line are actually the little shines of the heart and the blushes of the cheek. I sketched that in anyway to kind of show that I intend to do that as part of the art, but don't think we need lines for that. And I'm just gonna actually add a little line here, kind of the bottom of the chin. And when things get like this, where there's like a tiny section, I might as well just like color that in. So that's all I'm doing there. All right, the next step for us is to move on to the coloring. Now that our lining is done, we are gonna save as we go, and we're gonna turn off our sketch layer altogether. It's gone. Great. We're gonna make a new folder, and it's gonna go underneath the line one and not inside it either. I'm gonna color code our color layer to orange. So we've got lines, colors, and our sketch. Now, before we actually do start coloring, go back to your lines folder, click the whole folder, and click the set as reference layer. This is just gonna make our coloring go way quicker. Click your coloring folder and do a regular layer, not a vector layer. Okay, and then find the paint fill bucket tool And I'm gonna start by doing the skin color, something like that. Pick it on my color wheel. And the settings for your fill bucket tool might not look like this. So the settings that I have, let's see, are they gonna work? Yeah. If it doesn't work to just click and fill various areas, check that your settings are like this. Make sure your area scaling is turned on. Tolerance may need to go up and down. I find that's the one I'm usually sliding up and down for different line arts. And so play with the tolerance thing. And then you can also play with the close gap. The close gap is really cool because how do I explain? You don't need to have perfect closures in your lines. So what it's actually doing here is it's assuming that this should have been closed because these lines here are close enough to each other. So if you put the close gap really high, it's going to, you know, not fill further than where lines are close together essentially. And then you can turn that down so it knows to, okay, fill things as I've pretty much closed a lot of my gaps. And then where the eye is right here, I'm actually going to manually color this pixelation edge because I do care that it be filled in and can't really do it with the fill bucket. Back to my bucket tool and I can do the ear and the hands. Great. So what I like to do at first is just kind of flat color everything. So one layer per color. So we have sort of that peach skin color, new layer, and we're gonna do a hair color. And what? Link is blonde, yellow hair. So I'm gonna kind of exaggerate and make him maybe more on the yellow side and fill those sections in. I'm looking at it now and you may see this as you go too. You're like, I'm missing something. Don't be afraid to go back and add it. I feel like Link needs a couple of hair pieces just kind of sticking out back there. And that's all I want to add. And I'm going to carry on. So I'm going to eyedropper the same yellow and fill those in. I think that looks nice, kind of improvising. New layer. And I'm going to find a green, and I hate using like lime green. So green always feels really awkwardly bright. Oh, speaking of awkward, sometimes you might do what I do here, and it kind of looks like I didn't know what I was doing in the sketch. And the awkwardness of maybe this needed to be closed off here and closed off here. And I am drawing back on the original line layer that had all these lines, and maybe this was meant to be part of the hat. All right, we are fixing it as we go. I wish for your guys' sake that I was like perfect at teaching, but this is just the reality. We fix as we go. We encounter these issues. Okay, does Link even have sleeves? Does he ever have sleeves? Does he have gloves? This is what I'm talking about. He has gloves in many cases. So I think what we'll do to fix that issue, again, more troubleshooting, is I'm actually going to add gloves. And this is the easiest way I can think to do it. And I'm not going to go back and like do the sketch or anything. Like fix the sketch. It really doesn't matter. That's actually going to look good. I mean, it's not that we have to do it this way. We could definitely just have bare hands because it's just a simplified version of Link, but I would like to kind of be as true as I can to the character. I think that's kind of fun. All right, forgive me, but let's carry on. And I'm going to pick brown for this part of his gloves and fill that in. There's different versions of Link, but this is the one we're gonna go with. Brown gloves, and I'm gonna go back to the green layer and add green of the shoulder. That looks fine. And then the only other thing we have for color layers is a heart, and I'm gonna make that on the red side. All right, so we have our flat colors, flat coloring being no shading. And now we actually want to add shading. So what we should have is a skin layer, hair layer, green layer, glove layer, and a heart layer. So let's go and do skin first. And right before we do skin, this is kind of like part of skin, I like to just add a little coloration onto the eyes and mouth layer, and we kept it separate, and this is why. So new layer above, we are inside the line work layer folder, the lines folder, and we're going to click the clip to layer below button, little line attaching to this layer so that we can only draw on top of that layer and nowhere else. Find the airbrush tool, and I'm going to pick like a dark red, got the soft here, and I'm going to increase the size and just do, oops, I actually have to be clicked on the new layer, have to actually click it, just the insides of the eye, just softly, and on the tips of either side. So, and I'm actually going to do it to the tips of the mouth. Is that how I'm going to do it? How do I normally do this? I lied, in the middle. So I'm just going to erase where the corners of the mouth, and then the red goes just in the middle. So you get a sense of what we're doing there. And I'm actually going to do one more thing. I'm going to take a light blue. I'm going to take the brush that we were using before, brush tool, and do little kind of bubbles in the eye like that. And I'm going to take the airbrush tool and click the transparency to erase and just kind of soften that. I guess you could just take a darker blue, but that's what I'm going with. That is what I'm going with. All right, so that's all I'm going to do with that. Find your skin layer, new layer, clip that layer onto your skin layer, and we're going to find a peachy red, well, orange, I guess, peachy orange. And I like to do this with the G pen. I'm going to increase the size and just start shading in where the hair meets the forehead. And I'm even going to do a line like that. And this is a really strong bit of shading, so we can fix that in a second. Like, it's a really dark orange, quite contrasted from the color of the skin. So that's fine, and we can work with that in a second. So don't worry about the color too much. I'm just going to kind of shade a little bit in between the fingers. Not a big deal. Just a little bit. And that's almost all the shading we need. What I'm going to do is click the Lock Transparent Pixels button and pick a slightly lighter version of this orange. And I'm going to airbrush, make the airbrush bigger, and kind of softly at the bottom parts of the face do airbrushing so that it transitions into that darker orange. And I'm just going to do it to the fingers there so it's not too strong. So you can kind of see the difference if I go undo and redo. It just kind of softens it up a little bit. And now is the perfect time to do those rosy cheeks. So new layer, clip it on, and I'm going to pick a pinkish red or an orangish red, doesn't really matter, and airbrush those cheeks a little bit. And I also like to take the pencil and do kind of little strokes like that, all in the same direction. So that kind of looks cute. I guess cute is what we're going for. Okay, next step for us is gonna be shading the hair. And we're gonna go new layer, clip it on, and eyedropper the hair color, and we'll find a orangier yellow. And I think when we shade, we don't want to choose a more black version of the color or just simply darkening it. We can actually shade with color in a sense. So we are choosing orange in this case, a more orangey yellow. So we have sectioned hair, and I know this isn't going to be in depth on hair shading because hair shading is not the easiest thing, but in general, some tips are going to be to try and shade along edges, and we can kind of shade more on bottoms of hair. So I'm doing like this U shape here, and I'm just following my hair sections that I made. My hair sections. If you find hair difficult, as most of us do, I still do many a times, I was like drawing this, I'm like, how am I gonna draw this hair because every time I draw hair, it's a bit of a new adventure. Every hairstyle feels like a new adventure. Find references if you're struggling. So I did use a reference. I had pictures of what Link's hair looked like, and I kind of based it on that. References are your friend. Use them to help you. They will help. And you can even do some like just line strokey shadows that just make it look like hair. I would do them to a minimum, only a few. Too many and it's gonna feel like too many. Just a couple here and there, and don't overdo it. Perfect. So I've got that shadow layer of the hair. I'm gonna click my flat color layer, the lighter yellow, and create a new layer. This will automatically create a layer underneath the shadowed hair layer, and it'll also automatically be clipped. So we're gonna find, I'm just gonna do white. I'm gonna take white and I'm gonna kind of wiggle my pen tool across the hair, and it'll do something like that. And I'm gonna do a little one here, and that is our highlight for the hair. Nothing too crazy, and that's all I'm gonna do for that. Let us shade the green parts of the art. New layer, clip it onto that green layer. Eyedropper the green so we can pick a color based on that. It's going to be darker, and like I was talking about, maybe we'll go into slightly bluer. It just gives more dimension and interest to art if you don't just pick a darker version of the exact same color, if that makes sense. And in this case, I see that these two sections, to shade them together, and I don't want to like overlap like that. I want them separate, but they're on the same layer. I can use the auto select and select part of the hat, but I have to change my settings. So again, I need to make sure my settings are properly on. Refer multiple, set to reference layer, might need to click area scaling, might need to play with some settings to get it to work. So I've got that selected, and I'm gonna go back to my pen tool and I'm going to shade. How am I gonna do it? Like that. I find U shapes are really good for this kind of thing. U shape. And that's all I want to do there, I think. And then I'll just do one like that. I'm gonna go back to this layer with our light green, and I'm gonna click lock transparent pixels, and I'm gonna pick a warmer limier green and grab the airbrush and kind of just lightly on the edges, part of this shoulder, part of this hat, and a corner there, and just give some more dimension with a brighter green airbrushed on. Gives that gradient effect. Okay, and the gloves should be pretty straightforward. New layer, clip it on, and I'm actually gonna do a bit of a reversed thing here where instead of shading, I'm gonna go lighter. So I'm gonna pick a lighter brown, and I'm just gonna do that. Nice and easy, not time consuming to do that strategy. So like that, just a little round shape, and let's move on to the heart. New layer, clip it on, and color pick our heart. Pick a lighter version of it, maybe orangier, lighter and orangier. Increase our airbrush, get our airbrush going, and just in sort of from the middle. And it's easy to overdo, so just really subtle, tiny bit in the middle, okay? And I am gonna do a new layer again, and I'm gonna take a darker red, and I'm gonna take my pen tool, and I'm just gonna go along the edge of the heart, and I'm gonna leave a little space. This is just kind of how I shade hearts. Feel free to shade your heart like your way. This is my typical heart shading process, so you do it your way. And I'm gonna erase to fix the way that looks. That's looking not too bad, and I might turn down the opacity of it to lighten the intensity of that shading. And I'm gonna do the shines. So new layer, clip it on. I'm gonna grab white. I'm just gonna do a little bubble there, small bubble. And the same way, big bubble, small bubble. And that is all I'm gonna do with that. Okay, so now we're getting really close to done, but there is some very important steps that we don't wanna forget and not do here. So back to the layer with all the lines, click it, find the object tool, which is here, operation, and I'm gonna click object and I can click the line and I'm actually gonna increase the thickness of that edge of the heart. I feel like in this case, I always do this with hearts, increase the thickness so that it really pops. That might be too thick actually. So do what looks good to you. What was I doing? Size 8 in this case? Yeah. Okay, and then take this layer, the same one, and go layer duplicate, and you can put it at the bottom. So that means we gotta click it. I've got 2 of the same layers. They're the same. Drag it down all the way to the bottom. Don't get lost in your color layers. Maybe close that folder. Drag. It's an adventure to get to the bottom. And it's at the bottom. And with our object tool, we don't have to click any lines. Nothing is selected. And we just increase that to be a nice bold outline. It really makes the emote pop. What a difference. Glorious. Love it. Looking good. Looking good, Link. All right. And sometimes I also like to go back to that top layer that's on the top because the bottom one won't help us here. And find the correct line tool. And we want to do, oh, I am blind. Adjust line width is what I'm looking for. And it's on thicken. We could turn this up even more. And just thicken the tips of the fingers because I think that line there is important to stand out when small. So it's just one of the moves I make for helping our emote look good small. So at this point, the emote is technically done, but there are some important steps to make sure that the emote is going to read well. So what I'm going to do is give you guys access to this art file, this image file, I should say, that lets you test your images. So you can get this in the description. There'll be a link to this test chat box for you. So what we're gonna do to test this out is we're gonna go layer, merge, visible to new layer, or you can just click flatten image. We're gonna go to edit resolution and make it 28 pixels by 28 pixels. That's gonna make it the size it would be in chat. And then you're gonna go select all and you're gonna go edit copy and you're gonna go edit paste in the other window where the chat box is. This is gonna allow you to then move it and see, yes, I see how it looks against these various backgrounds. And you may end up seeing things like, can I see the eyes? Is it too small? Are the colors fine? And all that kind of thing. Now I have made other tutorials on troubleshooting with your emotes. So the video you specifically might want to look at is this 10 tips on how to make your emotes look good small. That's the video here in that playlist. Again, link in the description for that. So use this image for troubleshooting, and it's not going to be easy. Each emote is going to bring you different problems that you're going to have to solve. Once you've decided, yes, I am happy, this looks great small, go back to your original canvas and make sure you undo and undo and undo until you've got, undo again, got your canvas back to all its individual layers. You don't want to lose the ability to, edit them. So don't go saving before you've undone all that. But what you're going to do to export your files is go File, you can save as, and then click PNG. So we're going to go save as, and PNG must be a PNG file because JPEG doesn't support transparency. So PNG file, name it, save it. This is really important. If you are scaling your emotes down and you've used vector layers, and just in general, if you're scaling your emotes down, merge, then scale down, then save. So we're gonna flatten or merge all, and then we're gonna go to the resolution, not size, change image resolution, change it to like 112 by 112. You need to make that size, fine. And then you're gonna go file, save as, maybe label it 112, undo it, or scale it down to the other two sizes if you need them. Okay, but the merging is important so that it doesn't mess up your vector lines. The lines will get all funny on you if you don't. So now that I'm all done everything, I've clicked undo, 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 and I'm gonna save my CSP file so that if I ever need to come back and fix anything, I can, and I'm gonna save that, and I'm done. If you made it to the end of the video, then congratulations, you're of that 1%er group that actually cares about improving at emote art, and you have all, you know, the likeliness of being more successful than the other 99% who didn't watch till the end of the video. All right, well, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and that helps me. And you can check out my animating tutorial that's coming soon after this one. Hopefully that's helpful too. And you can join my Discord community, lots of emote artists in there, and artists in general to chat with and get help from and bounce ideas off of. And you can check out my other art tutorials, my emote tutorial playlist. Hope that helped. Comment if you have questions and thoughts or suggestions for future videos. All right, bye guys, have a good one.